The Law-i Fuad, revealed in 1869, shortly after the death of Fuad Pasha, the Ottoman minister to whose machinations it refers, describes the spiritual consequences of the abuse of power and foretells the imminent downfall of his colleague, Ali Pasha, and the overthrow of the Sultan himself. Prophecies that were widely circulated and whose dramatic fulfillment added greatly to the prestige of Baha'u'llah. In this letter, I presume spiritual consequences is referring to two conversations in the tablet that take place on a spiritual level that includes the angel of wrath, the angel of affliction, etc. It's kind of like a talk in the afterlife.
We call unto thee from beyond the sea of grandeur, upon the crimson land, above the horizon of tribulation. Verily, no God is there save him, the Almighty, the most generous. Walk thou steadfastly in my cause, and follow not the ways of those who, upon attaining unto the object of their desire, denied God, the Lord of Lords.
Baha'u'llah reminds Fuad that he should listen to the commands of Baha'u'llah because God's wrath is coming, another prophecy.
Ere long shall he lay hold upon them in his wrath, and he verily is the all-powerful, the all-subduing.
Fuad Pasha got sick in 1869 and went to Nice, France to get medical help. Fuad realizes that he is dying and starts to plead with the doctors and offering them money and palaces if they can cure him. Fuad has no hope of surviving and dies. Baha'u'llah describes an event in the next world. The angel of wrath, the keepers of the fathomless abyss, and the angel of affliction tell him he is going to hell. Baha'u'llah quotes the Quran and describes hell as wherein the heart boileth. But the name Fuad also means heart, so it is kind of like a play in words. There's another conversation in this letter similar to the one about Fuad. It is about a judge called Mahdi. This judge made decisions against Baha'u'llah and was a friend of Mirza Yahya, who was a terrible enemy of Baha'u'llah. His full name was Mirza Mahdi-i Rashti. The letter says,
Then we seized Mahdi, to whom we had promised divine chastisement in our books and scriptures. When our awful majesty encompassed him, he entreated, May I not retrace my steps? A voice exclaimed, Woe betide thee, O disbeliever in the day of resurrection. This is the nethermost fire, and its flames have been made to blaze for thee. Thou didst forsake all righteous deeds in thy vain and futile life, and now thou hast none to shield thee from God. Thou art indeed he who caused all hearts to be consumed, and the Holy Spirit to lament. Soon will we dismiss the one who was like unto him, and will lay hold on their chief who ruleth the land. And I verily am the Almighty, the all-compelling.
Baha'u'llah clearly prophesies the downfall of Ali Pasha and the Sultan in one short sentence. This short prophecy was well published at the time, and after the Sultan fell from power, many people turned towards Baha'u'llah. Okay, let's talk about the fate of these leaders. Okay, first, Abdulaziz. The Sultan banished Baha'u'llah from prison to prison, caused great harm to his family, and spread lies about Baha'u'llah throughout the Ottoman Empire in Persia. The Sultan was deposed in consequence of a palace revolution in 1876 and was assassinated 4 days later. He was condemned to die by a fatwa of the Mufti and stripped of his title of Caliph by another religious warrant. Fuad, as I mentioned, contracted a disease while visiting France and could not be saved by the best French doctors. He offered the doctors his palaces if he could be cured. Ali Pasha, he fell from grace with the Sultan and lost all of his property and possessions. He was found dead in beggar's clothing, again within a couple of years after receiving the letter from Baha'u'llah. There were many other government officials on a local level that had tragic endings because of their bad treatment of Baha'u'llah. Too many to mention in this talk. As I mentioned, the fall of the Ottoman Empire began with the loss of the 1876-1878 war with Russia and was finally dissolved after World War I. All those countries now having to govern themselves. This was quite a thing in the Middle East because a lot of the borders were not that fixed. So it was a big problem. The loss of that war in 1878 emancipated 11 million people from the Turkish yoke. Adrianople was occupied by Russian forces. The Young Turks revolted and overthrew the government in 1908, and the empire itself was dissolved as a result of World War I. A republic was proclaimed, and the Uthman dynasty that had endured for 6 centuries was ended. The Sultan also had the title of Caliph, and the abolishment of that institution had a major impact as well. The Caliph was the self-styled vicar of the Prophet of Islam, known also as the commander of the faithful, and the protector of the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. Its spiritual jurisdiction extended over more than 200 million Muslims. The Caliphate, the most august and powerful institution of Islam, was without consultation with any community in the Sunni world summarily abolished. The unity of the most powerful branch of the Islamic faith was thereby shattered. A formal, complete, and permanent separation of the Turkish state from the Sunni faith was proclaimed. The Sharia law was annulled. Ecclesiastical institutions were disendowed. A civil code was promulgated. Religious orders were suppressed. The Sunni hierarchy was dissolved. The Arabic tongue, the language of the Prophet of Islam, fell into disuse, and its script was superseded by the Latin alphabet. The Quran itself was translated into Turkish. Constantinople, the dome of Islam, sank to a level of a provincial city, and its peerless jewel, the Mosque of Sophia, was converted into a museum.